Wild, Wild Spud, a short story by Leonardo da Petacci. Legends. Stories told through time that speak of unimaginable feats of strength, courage, and passion. Some inspire us to go out into the world and give it our all. Others fill us with dread and fear as to what might be out there. Some educate us and teach us a valuable lesson before it's too late. This is the legend of Rory McCain, the Spud of the West. Our legend begins in the humble settlement of Blundertate, a typical little community who set up shop within the wastes of the West. Most of the buildings were made of solid foundations, sturdy timber, hardy stone, fine clay. Some of the structures in the town, however, had certainly seen better days. The most popular of these being the town's saloon, the Peeled Patron. The Peeled Patron was largely crafted out of timber, but the wood had aged and rotted, leaving a fragile structure that could barely be considered indoors. In fact, the saloon had only one door, which hung precariously on its hinges. Technically speaking, it wasn't indoors, it was indoor. Despite the abysmal state of the saloon, it was a constant and beloved part of Blundertate, loved by all potatoes who planted here, all except one. Old Dusty Chip. Old Dusty Chip was a grizzled and spoiled spud, his skin covered in green, his mustache littered with dirt. Old Dusty Chip was a loudmouth and a bigot, and was the shame of Blundertate, stealing joy and leaving dismay wherever he tread. And to top it all off, his boots clashed awfully with his waistcoat, a true crime to fashionable potatoes across the West. For all of old Dusty Chip's faults and flaws, he had one decent quality to him. Old Dusty Chip never bothered the patrons of the Peeled Patron. On the rare occasion where he did enter the saloon, he kept himself to himself, refraining from interacting with anyone except the barkeeper for the occasional glass of milk. That was until the day Rory McCain came to town. All seemed well at the Peeled Patron. Potatoes danced and drank without care in the world. Then Rory McCain entered the Peeled Patron, stepping over the bat-wing doors that once hung at the entrance and were never moved after falling off their hinges. A few of the patrons noticed him, but gave him little thought, until Rory took his seat at the bar, side by side with the shame of Blundertate. Silence choked the room. All eyes turned to Rory and Chip, nervously waiting for... well, no one knew what exactly, but it was going to be something, and most likely something very, very bad. Rory raised his hand to the barkeep.
"Over here, son. Been a long journey, and I'm as parched as a dry well."
The barkeep paused a moment before approaching, glass in hand and face full of fear. Here you are, sir," the barkeep mumbled, sliding the glass of water to Rory. "Say, you look a little, uncomfortable on that there stool. Why don't you settle sharp on that table across there, and I'll get you a bottle on the house."
"Well, that's awful kind, mister, but I'm good where I am, thanks. Pa always said there ain't no better place than on top of a tall stool, hunched over the bar of a saloon, and from my experience, I'd have to agree with him on that one."
The tension in the room was tangible and grew heavier with every word that left Rory's mouth. The barkeep was stumped. He had no idea how to make Rory move without clearly calling out Old Dusty. Luckily for him, he didn't need to do anything. Old Dusty Chip had it covered. Turning to Rory, Old Dusty chipped in.
"I'd listen to the little spud if I was you, tater tot. This bar don't act kindly to mouthy little spuds like yourself."
Rory chuckled and turned to the miserable old spud.
"Oh, somebody woke up on the wrong side of the crib this morning. Cheer up, little spud. I'm just trying to enjoy myself. You should try it sometimes. And looking at all that green you got on you there, I'd say you ain't got much time left to try."
A glass shattered, dropped by a patron who had just witnessed a dead spud walking. No one talked to old Dusty Chip like that and lived to see the sunset.
Well, little tater tot,
Old Dusty grunted as he stood up from his stool.
if you're so sure you got more time than me, you'd be brave enough to put it to the test. You and me, outside, 12 paces, now. Or are you too chicken?
Rory chuckled.
Well, shoot, I thought you was gonna be all talk and no bite, but you really think you're the big bad dog of this town, don't you? All right, 12 paces it is.
The two Spuds made their way outside, followed by a crowd of watching eyes, eyes filled with pity and loss. They'd seen this show before. Hotshot Spud waltzes into town, picks up a fight with old Dusty, and ends up buried far from home. Such a pity. Rory and old Dusty stood on their marks, 12 paces from each other, midday sun shining down on them. One of them wasn't leaving their spot alive, but at least it was a pleasant day to go.
On the 12th bell chime, you'll learn your final lesson, tater tot.
Rory didn't flinch. Maybe he hadn't heard old Dusty. Or maybe he didn't think it worthy a response. Arrogance and confidence had been the downfall of many Spuds before him, and would be for many other Spuds that followed. But not at the hands of old Dusty Chip, because this would be old Dusty's final duel. The bells began to chime and the countdown begun. Eyes peeled, stomachs in mouths. The 12th chime rang and the Spuds drew. Rory shot straight for old Dusty's wrist, disarming the old Spud in the literal sense. Old Dusty's hand flew straight off, streams of starch shooting to the sky. He dropped to his knees as the crowd stood motionless, unsure whether they had actually seen what just happened. The day had finally come. Old Dusty Chip was finally put in his place. The townsfolk cheered for their savior, Rory McCain, the Spud who freed Blunder Tate from the oppression of old Dusty Chip. Rory made his way back to the bar, took up his stool, and waved to the barkeep.
I'll take that bottle now, good sir.